All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and good afternoon for those of you who are joining us for the first time. This is our student ambassador panel as a part of our virtual admitted students workshop series. My name is Benjamin Rogers, and I am the admissions coordinator here at the University of Buffalo School of Law. Today, I'm joined by four of our current students to answer your questions about the program, what it's like being a student, and any questions that you may have. Feel free to put them in the chat box as we go along or unmute yourself. This recording will be utilized as well for everyone to access after the fact. But with that said, I would like to just take a second before we begin to have our students introduce themselves. Haley, why don't you start just by telling us about yourself, how you got to law school, what you're involved in, etc. And then we'll go to Teresa.
Sure. So I'm a 2L at UB Law right now. I'm originally from Batavia, New York, so nearby. And at one point lived in Buffalo, actually, because I went to UB for my undergrad and grad school. I went to Buff State for higher education administration. And then I worked for a couple years at SUNY Brockport. So I lived in Rochester for a couple years too, just staying in the Western New York area. Because I like it. I also lived for 6 months in Orlando doing the Disney College program at one point, and I did not like that, even though it was warmer than it is now. But I end up in law school. I actually, in high school, did a legal academy program. So half of my day was spent at Genesee Community College doing like Crim 101 classes, stuff like that. It was mostly because I just wanted senior year that was a little bit different than just sitting in like classes at my high school, but I also was interested in law school, and I ended up visiting UB Law I think in like April of that year, and that made me decide to go to UB for undergrad. And I also was really interested in the law school at that point. Professor Stylen actually was the one who introduced us. I think he was a new professor at that time. He is not new anymore. And then I end up that was my plan originally, as a communications major, but I decided to hold off on law school just because I wasn't sure about the commitment and the money and things like that. End up going a different route. But the pandemic hit, and I still did have a job, luckily, but it kind of made me realize that I didn't want to wait any longer for something I was still interested in doing. I decided to just apply, take the LSAT with all of my newfound free time. And things just worked out. So I'm very glad I did it. I came to school at least with kind of like an interest in education law. I'm fortunate that this summer I'll be working at a firm that does a lot of that work. I am currently in the law review. That is very time consuming, but important club on campus. And then the moot court board. I did moot court in the fall, and then if you do well, you get asked to join that. So you plan the future moot court competitions. So those are probably my two big things. But I also try to do things like this just because I know when I was applying, I went to a few of these events, and I really appreciate hearing about the school. So hopefully this is valuable for people.
Thank you, Haley. That was very helpful. And then Teresa.
Hi, everyone. My name's Teresa, and I'm from Buffalo, New York. I am a 1L. I did my undergrad here, and I spent 1 year just like working. I worked on the West Side. I did nonprofit management. I decided to go to law school actually because a lot of the work that I did was focused on policymaking and grant writing. So I had to deal with like the law and policy for a majority of my job. So I thought, like, what better way than to just like come to law school to actually like understand what's going on. What else? I'm interested in corporate law and like working for private firms. I'll be moving to Pittsburgh this summer for like 10 weeks. I'll be working with McGuire Woods, which is like a bigger law firm. I'm looking forward to that opportunity. I like UB because it's affordable, and even though I'm moving to Pittsburgh for the summer, there's still a strong legal community here that we're able to connect with and network with, and they're always willing to reach out and help the law students like with their journey through law school, as well as getting jobs.
Thank you, Teresa. And then how about Timothy or Tim?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name's Tim. I'm a 1L. I'm originally from Orchard Park. I'm really excited to speak to you today. I went to UB for my undergrad, got degrees in accounting and political science. I actually just graduated last year, so I went straight from undergrad into law school. I'm also interested in corporate law. I'm going to be interning this summer with a judge, which is going to be really exciting. I'm really excited for that. I've been involved in the student ambassador program, and I'm looking forward to getting involved in other things on campus, especially 2L and 3L year. And I really picked UB Law for its community and its connections with the Buffalo area. Being really the only law school within a few hour radius of here, UB Law has a huge connection with the Buffalo community. I mean, from day one, you're really connected with a huge alumni network, student network. Everyone around here is really supportive. So it's a great choice to come here. I'm really happy that I did.
Thank you, Tim. And then last, Mia.
Hi, my name is Mia. I'm originally from Lewiston, New York, which is just north of Buffalo, and I am a 1L. I went to UB for undergrad. I studied psychology and criminology, and that's where I really started to get interested in law through my criminology classes. And I knew that I wanted to work with incarcerated populations and advocacy for them. So I'm actually in the dual degree program. I'm getting my master's in social work as well as my JD. So last year, I went straight from undergrad to my first year of the master's program. Now I'm in my 1L year, and next year I'll be doing a combination of the two. And I really loved UB as an undergrad, and it offered so many opportunities. So the ability to do both degrees here and stay here was really compelling for me. And I have just been so fortunate to connect with everyone here, and I'm still getting great opportunities through career services. They're really helpful through this, being able to help other people find their path, especially because law school was never really an intention of mine. It just kind of happened, and I'm really happy that it did. So yeah.
Thank you, Mia. And thank you all for just providing your introductions. For now, we'll start to move into the Q&A section of the event. For those of us here, feel free to unmute yourselves or put your questions in the chat. I do have a few sent to me directly that I could start with, but for everyone else, feel free to start and put them in the chat. I will start with a very common one that I just got. How do you attain, what does balance look like in law school for each of you?
Do you want to keep with the same order throughout?
Sure, that works great.
Okay. So I think it's interesting because in the first year definitely looks a little bit different than 2L. First year is definitely super work heavy. Grades are important, so you really want to focus on giving a lot of time for classes. 2L is when you kind of start having a lot of different pulls to your time. And also when, I don't know, I think they think you're taking less classes even though you're not. So they start asking you to just do more stuff with newfound time that you don't actually have. So I think 1L first semester, I definitely tried to maintain a similar social life that I had before law school while also doing law school. That was not smart. Second semester, I flipped totally in the opposite direction, really focused on classes, did better, which is good. But was like, wow, I haven't seen my friends in 6 months. So this year I've been trying to do a little bit better balance of both. And I definitely think it's possible. Something I like about Buffalo, and some people touched on it, is just there's a really good community. It's a really good size where I feel like you can still kind of afford to go and do some fun activities, and there are a lot of local things, but it's not like somewhere like maybe New York City where the other stuff is overwhelming with how much other options you have. And it's not just a small town where you pretty much are only on campus. You kind of have a good balance of things to do. And the school has good opportunities to do fun things. So I think there's definitely room to balance it as much as you want. I know some people who probably do the bare minimum school-wise and have great lives outside of it. And then some people who dedicate their whole time to school. But I think finding something kind of in the middle, whether it's one activity a weekend or one day out in the weekend that you have no school at all, is a really nice way to balance things. So I try to do stuff like that, though it is hard to tell family and friends, especially everyone here lives locally. Your family and friends probably still expect you to like do things with them, and it's kind of hard to say no. But being able to say no is good.
Thank
Sorry.
you.
So I totally agree with Haley. And also it depends on who your professor is. So last semester I experienced like a really work heavy semester. My professors had like assignments like due every single week. So I didn't really have like a social life, but the biggest takeaway from last semester for me, I would say, is like really honing on your like time management skills. Even though last semester I didn't have time for like family and friends, it still taught me that I had to block out my times, and like you should give yourself time to like take care of yourself and like practice good self-care. This semester it's a little bit more lax for me. We don't really have assignments due every single week, and it's just like a final at the end of the semester. So usually I just have like maybe a half a day to like decompress, and that's usually like my Thursdays after class. But I will say a lot of my friends that are in law school right now, they do like sometimes they do a Thursday or a Friday where they just like that's their time. Like they hang out with their friends or like do like different activities, and like they still have time to do the readings and other things that we have to do for school. But definitely 1L, it's super intensive. I've heard from a bunch of 2Ls and 3Ls, it's a little bit more lax in the next couple of years, but I feel like it's because you're more interested in like the classes that and like they're more engaging. Whereas like they pick your classes your first year and you don't really get a say in it. Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway that I got from my first semester is to treat it like a full-time job. And it doesn't end up being 40 hours in a week, it ends up being more than that. But if you give yourself that boundary of after X amount of hours, I'm going to stop working and I'm going to give myself that time, then you're setting yourself up for a healthy work-life balance, because you're going to have, that half a day, that full day on the weekend, that Thursday afternoon, whatever it ends up being, you're going to give yourself and force yourself to take that break. And you're going to need that, because when it's, the middle of November and finals are coming up, you're going to want to give yourself that break, and you're going to need to give yourself that break. And it's okay to not work, 24/7, 7 days a week, because you're going to burn out. And, you don't need to constantly be working to succeed in law school.
Thank you. Mia?
Yeah, I found that scheduling activities was probably the best way to do it for me. I play soccer in my free time, like that is a set day of the week, time of the week. And so like that is my time. So I think that like making sure to have time to yourself, even if it's not every day, a few days a week, just like a certain block, like if you know that you don't work well later at night, like acknowledge that, don't try and work through that if it's not going to be successful, and really take that time for yourself. Scheduling an advanced time with friends, which I know isn't always possible because some people like to do a little impromptu things, but if it's possible, then you know what to expect, you know how to budget your time going forward. I think that's really helpful. I also take Thursday afternoons off because I know that I have a long weekend. So I like this is the time that I can take for me. So I think that that's really important too.
Thank you. Thank you all for those great answers. I do have another question, actually from Anushri. What do your day-to-days look like? And I'm not sure if you guys can answer this, but how does class averaging work at UB? So the day-to-days, I think we can still go in that same order since it's to everyone, but very similar to the balance question.
Yeah, so day-to-day kind of starts looking different 2L year. My fall semester was really nice. I only had classes Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Actually, Wednesday was just work, so that was nice too. Well, my moot court class that was done halfway through. So that's nice. You kind of have the more flexibility in terms of what you want if you want a 9 to 9 Tuesday, Thursday, but then 4 days off over the weekend, you can do that. Some people work better by working only in the morning, having their nights free. Day to day right now, I have 1 class and 2 hours of work on Mondays, an externship all day on Tuesdays, and then I go to class at night. Wednesdays, I have half day externship, class. Thursdays, I work. I still like to keep my Fridays free. I need at least a few days for homework and things on the weekends. There's times where I feel like, wow, that's a lot, like, bound up, but I know I have to do like classes. I know I'm not going to come home and do work, honestly. I'd rather allot the whole weekend to that. So it's kind of nice to have that flexibility. 1L is kind of more a standard schedule, as you guys can talk to, but I also had to work a few hours last year. So last year I had the classes, but I worked in the evenings, kind of the same thing, and then left myself with the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That works best for me. In terms of class averages, I guess maybe like the curve is what they're kind of asking about. I know there's like 1L especially, there's classes where there's only a set amount of grades that are given out, like X number of A's, things like that. More people pooling at the B plus area. I guess if that's the question, yes, I think most schools are still kind of sticking with that curve. And a lot of the bar classes, as you continue on, have a similar one, but I think there is still some discretion on how professors grade, but I do not purport to understand how that works. So.
Yeah, so 1L is a little bit more structured. We have classes Monday through Thursday, and it's typically like a 9 to 3 type of ordeal, except when currently right now we have like legal professions. So like there's like one day where we have to stay until like 5 o'clock. But like that's pretty much it. My day-to-day, how it looks. So after class, I usually go home, eat, decompress for like maybe an hour, and then I start working on homework. I really don't stop until like 10 o'clock, but that's like me, not like I don't work like throughout those hours. Like I'll work a little bit, take a break, look at my phone, maybe like just like, so it's very lax during like the weekdays. However, my weekends are a little bit more busy. So I work I actually work under Ben. So Thursdays and Fridays, I'm working at the admissions office. So my Fridays, I usually don't do any work because I work here and then I work at my parents' restaurant. And then, so I guess like my break that I give myself is Fridays. So I don't look at any homework. I'm more of a nighttime studier. So I usually come here. If you see me, it's like Thursdays, dead of night. I'm here at the lounge, just studying away. But I do most of my homework on the weekends, reading wise. I just prep for like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays readings, and then Thursday readings I just do throughout the week. So like that's how my week goes. Further, when we get to like final exam time, that's when I start looking at putting in extra time with like outlines and supplement like aids, but that's pretty much it. As for the class average, I believe that UB doesn't have an official curve, and it's just up to the professor's discretion, but I'm not sure what the specifics are, so.
Yeah, like Teresa said, in 1L, your class schedule is really regimented. You're assigned classes before you even come here. It's usually a 9 to 3 ordeal, except for your legal profession day. I'm the opposite. I'm a morning person. I'm usually at the library like when it opens. And I will sometimes stay after classes are over for a few hours to continue working. But like 9 o'clock, I cut myself off from working. And I try to give myself Sundays off. It usually doesn't end up being a full day that I give myself off, but I've attempted this semester to try to give myself more time to not be working. As for the curve, I don't think I have anything more to add. I know all of your doctrinal bar classes, your first at least your first semester, I know, are curved. I would assume your second semester, they're curved as well. Your legal writing class, I think, is curved too, but I don't know that for sure. But I don't know any specifics other than that on the curve.
So my day today is also pretty regimented. I typically don't do much homework on Mondays because that is my later day with our legal professions class. So by the time that I get out, I just need a break. Thursday afternoons are also usually a break for me. And then the weekends are pretty much my work days. I am also a morning person. So I usually will start around 8:30, 9 o'clock. I take a break at like 1 or 2, and then like I give myself an hour and a half to like eat, move around a little bit, like just so that I'm not sitting all day. And then I'm usually done by like anywhere from 4 to 6, depending on the day, just because I know that like I've been working for so long and like I know that I need another break. So but it does depend on the workload. If there's a big assignment coming up, then I'll work later. Yeah, that's pretty much my day to day. It's just the work and then taking breaks when I need it.
Thank you. And I will just add, for Anushri, UB Law doesn't have a specific like grading curve across all coursework. It's mostly just up to the individual professors on how they want to handle their grading within their own coursework. I do also have a follow-up question to the earlier balance question. This one was to just Teresa and Haley, but I don't know if Mia or Tim have anything to add as well. How do you balance specifically working within an actual job and classwork in addition to that?
Sure. So I actually work also like Teresa on campus. I work in accessibility resources. So that's kind of nice because they do testing. So they're open from like 8 to 7 during the week and then have a Saturday option. I like to keep that open for homework, but I could do that. So in 1L year, I worked 3:30 to 7:30, 2 days a week. And I think they let you work up to 20 hours. I wouldn't recommend that for anyone, which is difficult if you do need money, but I think 8 to 10 hours wasn't bad. Sometimes it was frustrating because I'd have to miss out on like school related events that were going on, but working on campus was nice because they were flexible. But I think some working is definitely manageable, and Teresa might attest to this, but sometimes it's kind of nice to do something other than school. And I could do schoolwork sometimes, but sometimes I was like, I don't even want to look at this or think about it. So it was a nice productive way to do something other than work. Even though like Mia, I also try to like allot time for like volleyball on Thursday nights. So it's something that I'm not doing homework also, but work is a nice way to also intake money while avoiding homework. So
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm still trying to figure out how I balance work and studying. I will say, however, I would say my 2 jobs that I have are definitely outliers. And like I wouldn't be doing like a serving job like during law school. Working at the Office of Admissions is nice because like Ben and all of the coordinators here, like they know what I'm going through. So it's pretty laxed here. Of course, like when applications are coming up, like it's a little bit busy here, but they understand that I have like finals coming up or like a memo due or something. As for working at my parents' restaurant, again, an outlier. My parents are my parents. They let me study when it's slow there. They let me take off whenever I want because like they understand that I have to go through school. I will say I agree with Haley, like don't try to do like 20 hours a week. That's a lot. I do like 10 hours, give or take. And like, that's me keeping like a strict, like, okay, like I have to do homework. Like I have to, just pick and choose like what I have to do weekends. So like, yeah, like you're going to have to miss out on some school events or you're going to have to miss out on a few birthday parties. But like the end goal is to get through law school at the end of the day. So just like putting, how I think of it is just like it's okay to put your social life on hiatus for a little bit, but I understand a lot of people need interactions with people. I personally do not. That's just me.
Thank you. And then I do have another question in the chat. What was challenging for you from transitioning from undergraduate studies to law school studies? Can be to anyone that wants to answer it.
I can take it. So my last year of undergrad was virtual because of COVID. So that was also like, that was a big change in itself. And at UB, like a lot of the classes that I was taking as an undergrad, my senior year, they didn't require exams. They were like final papers. So you had a lot of time to work on them. And because it was virtual, I was like getting things done like weeks in advance. Then I went right into that master's in social work program. That was also different. That's also a lot of papers, not as many exams. So then when I came to law school, it was like the first time in 2 years that I'd had to like really study for an exam. And that was a big change. Like I was always a good test taker, but then I had to like relearn how to take exams, how to study, and then specifically how to do that for law school. So I ended up making outlines like really early on. And like after each unit of each class, like I made like a master outline of all of my notes, and then I would trim it down. And and then I would keep it updated like every week or every other week, depending on like how class was progressing. So I think that starting my outlines early helped me prepare for exams and making that transition.
I would echo what Mia said, and I think the biggest thing for me was the quantity of reading. Coming from accounting, where you don't really need to do reading to succeed in it, there's really no reading involved. Having hundreds of pages of reading a week was kind of a shell shock for me, and it still is for some classes. So it's really an adjustment to when you're going to do the reading, how you're going to do the reading, because it's reading unlike anything you've seen before. So you have to take time to really adjust to how you're going to go about doing your assignments, because you don't really have your typical homework assignments like you might have in college. All your assignments are your reading that you're going to do every week. And you just kind of have to make a system for yourself, how you're going to get it done, when you're going to get it done, for each of your classes. So I think that the reading is definitely the biggest thing for me.
For me, it was definitely getting the work done. I'm more of a dependent learner. So if an assignment is due, I'm gonna submit it on Blackboard. These readings, they're assigned, but they're not for grade. So there are days when you're just feeling terrible and you're gonna skip a reading. Like that's fine. However, don't try to make that a habit, because like that will screw you over during final exam times. Reading was definitely a big struggle of mine last semester. The legal jargon was really hard to adjust to, as well as just like the length and intensity of like what we had to read. There are things out there that will help you like get better at it. So there's Quimby, which they basically do visual interpretations of cases, as well as they do like case briefs. So I split with a classmate, and it cut down on like of course, like we still analyze the cases, but like case briefing is really hard, especially your first semester, to understand what's going on. So having a supplement aid to like help you along just like helps you with like your legal writing. As for the outlines, I don't make my outlines. I go ask the 2Ls and 3Ls if they have an outline, and I just, read it, update it, and like figure out as I go, because like why do that extra work when other people have done it prior, like, so there's definitely ways to cut down your time here. And like, I'm a firm believer of working smarter and not harder. So my best advice is definitely reach out to like the upperclassmen and learn from like their mistakes or like get tips from them.
Definitely echoing some people, what they said, like Mia, I had a similar undergrad with communications and then grad school, higher ed administration, lots of papers, hadn't taken a final in quite some years. And I also could get so far ahead in those classes that I was done with the semester by like April 1st. That was great. I tried to do that in law school. Not really possible, led to a lot of pain and suffering. So yeah, you're just gonna have to know that like your whole weekend is probably dedicated to reading, and it is hundreds of pages. And the sooner you get over the fact that it is time consuming and there's not that many ways to shorten it, there's ways like Teresa mentioned, you know, getting a case brief elsewhere. That helps a little bit. I also, different than Teresa, I cannot skip a reading. Even if I am like on death's front door, I will read every page of it, whether or not I'm understanding it. That there's probably like a balance level to that in terms of like, maybe you realize this professor truly does not care about the cases or truly does not care about the questions in the book. Skimming them will save you like a lot of time. So I think the best advice would be, it takes a while, but figuring out what works for you, figuring out what your professor actually cares about for your own sanity. I also at first was like, outlining is dumb, this is time consuming. And then but I couldn't read other people's outlines because that wasn't helpful to me either. So I just ended up reading my notes and I was like, wow, these notes aren't even very good either. And I came up with kind of a combination of like pre-writing and something that might be like an outline, but it's basically me relearning the material, and that worked for me. So I think you'll hear like a lot of advice, intake it, but also think about what actually would make you learn the material, because that's the most important. Otherwise you'll get to the final and realize I just spent 4 months learning nothing, basically. So.
Thank you all. I mean, that was very descriptive, and I think that was helpful. I do have another one. It's a two-parter. What clubs or student events do you take part in? Do you have time for events during your 1L year? I imagine they mean student events.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Teresa.
Oh, sorry. So I am so for 1L year, you're not allowed to hold official positions in student organizations. However, you can be members of different organizations. So I'm a part of BALSA as well as PALSA and a few other minority student associations. And they don't really require much. Like they offer events, like you show up, and like it's a great way to connect with other students. As a person of color, I find it really nice that I could connect with other students of color, especially since we share similar experiences. Do I have time? Yeah, I'm going next week to convention for BALSA, so we'll be going to DC. And a few weeks ago, I went to Atlantic City for their regional convention. So there is time for you to block out and actually participate in student events. But again, it comes down to you managing your time correctly and like getting the readings done ahead of time, et cetera, et cetera.
Does anyone else have anything to add for the student organizations?
Sure. I think it's interesting 1L year because you kind of like can join the stuff, but you're not really super involved, which is probably smart, to be honest, because sometimes you barely have more than enough time to just like go to the occasional thing. I think 1L year you can, especially if you plan ahead, there's some of the big events post-COVID now, but like the Halloween party and like Barrister's Ball is coming up. I know a lot of people are like, if I'm going to do one event, it's going to be those big SBA events. So you definitely have time for those. If anyone says they don't, they're just making a conscious objection to going to them, which is fair. Some people also don't like big events. So those are definitely possible. And then there's a ton of small stuff all the time. Like I know last night there was like a movie screening, which like within reason I could probably have gone to. Last year I went to a first gen screening of Legally Blonde. Like that was just something nice. If you do want to kind of block off that time and you know you have time for it, to like go to the small stuff, because there's always small stuff going on. There's panels. A lot of the groups, affinity groups that are law related have panels, which are actually nice because you can go down and talk to a lawyer in the community things like that, networking events. I definitely actually recommend first year people make time for the networking events because I think that makes a difference in terms of looking for something. I also interned with a Judge 1L year, and stuff like that just got me more used to like what opportunities are out there and what people are doing. 2L year, like I mentioned, I'm in law review. That has its own kind of social event planning, which is nice. Law review is very time consuming. So the trade-off is maybe that you have a happy hour once a semester. Woohoo. But it is nice because there's the law review suite. It's a really good community to like interact with people who are doing the same work as you and dealing with the same stresses. So that's nice. I would say as you go along, like I mentioned, people will like, if someone's running a club, they want you to join. You need to figure out what actually makes sense for you time commitment wise, and not, yes, you could join 10 clubs, but if you are like me, you'll feel bad when you're not engaging with them, and then you'll just be stressed by it. So I think prioritizing certain clubs and activities, like, I don't know, Mia, if you're interested in criminal justice, doing trial tech and trial team, that's like a large time commitment, but not doing moot court. And if you're interested in working for a large firm, law review might be a good thing, but not one of the other journals. But if you don't care about a large firm, doing a different journal. There's opportunities to like do some of the big things, but they are time consuming. So you need to like actually figure out what you are interested in and like not let yourself try to join everything, I guess.
I
Yeah,
think I would, oh, sorry, go ahead,
Jen.
Mia.
Okay, so I have become involved, like, not super crazy with the domestic violence task force, like volunteering with some of their things. Like they had a bake sale last semester. They're having their big event in the spring. I said I would volunteer for that. EPILT, the public interest law group, that's something that I've gotten involved in, and like volunteering when I can. That provides funding for students who are interested in public interest, so that they can get paid doing public interest work over the summers. Like I already know I'm going to be working at Prisoners Legal Services. That's a nonprofit. That's not paid. So like helping out with their events, like that we're going to have an auction at the end of this month that will help me secure funding so that I can do like the work that I really am passionate about and still like make some money.
I think I would add two things to what everyone said. The first is about your time. Clubs are really good about scheduling events in times that they know people can attend. I know a lot of clubs do events from like 12 to 1, which is when a lot of people don't have classes, or they'll do events at night when they know that people don't have classes as well. So if there is an event that interests you, there's definitely time that you can make for it. They also give you plenty of notice that they're going to hold the events. So as long as you are able to schedule it into your time, then you definitely can make it. And Haley mentioned networking events. There's a ton of them your first year. I would definitely recommend going to them. They're a great way to meet people in the legal community, and they're a great way to secure potential internships. So anything that the school puts on, networking event-wise, alumni-wise, I would definitely recommend going to.
Thank you. I think that was helpful. I did get another question, but I think they mean literally, when do you eat? And do you eat on campus or at home? Anyone can take that, or we can go in order.
I can start with that. So we had mentioned that our schedule is pretty regimented. So you have class usually that ends at like 11:45, and your next class won't start until 1. So you have like an hour break that usually is dedicated for lunch. And then, I mean, that's usually when I would have my lunch. And then I would usually go home and have dinner sometime around like 6:30 after I work for a little while longer. So law students do eat. You just have to make the time for yourself to have food.
Yeah, I also eat during that lunch break. And then like I pack snacks in case I get hungry during classes, just because like you're using your brain, you get hungry. And then if you're hungry, then you can't focus on the material. I usually find like a nice spot near a window. So I don't usually eat in the library because like for me, that's a no, like books, library, like that's not where you eat. So I find somewhere else on campus just so I can like kind of get a break from like the law school vibe and get some sunlight when it's sunny here.
I eat whenever I'm hungry. So yes, we do have breaks, but sometimes, you know what, I pack a lunch during that time and it's an option for me if like I want to like eat from the 12 to 1, but I listen to my body at the end of the day and I will drop anything and everything to go eat. Don't restrict yourself from like eating healthy and like choose the meal over your reading at the end of the day because you're not going to work as hard when you're like stressed out, you know.
Also, was just gonna add, like, to all year, I mentioned, like, sometimes I'm somewhere from 9 to 9. I still pack lunch and dinner as much as I can fit in a lunch pail because relying on like spending your money on campus is an option. And I will go treat myself with some Starbucks and like a lemon loaf or something. If I'm having a bad day, which is every day. But packing some things you're not only relying on spending $10 every day is preferable. Having enough groceries at your house so you have the option to pack stuff is important. So you actually will have to like plan out grocery shopping, and also like meal prepping. So maybe you have a warm dinner to come home to if you don't have time to cook. I don't know about everyone's living situation. Obviously, a lot of people live near campus. I actually, most of the time, sometimes I stay in Buffalo, but most of the time commute from Batavia. And I live with my mom. No shame. She cooks me dinner. It's great. She buys me groceries. Sorry, that is a luxury. But I'm not kidding. Sometimes I don't think I would have had time to go if I didn't have that. So factor that in mind if you're not living with a spouse, a roommate that's helpful, or a parent. You will have to like dedicate time out of your week to do that because otherwise you'll just forget. You'll read all day and you'll forget. So
Thank you. And I just got a question, I think, in response to Haley. Do you recommend commuting or living on campus or in apartments near campus?
trying to unmute. Sure. And everyone else can also like mention their situation, but I do like for saving money, I commute from Batavia and the fact that I'm not paying for rent, which I have done in the past, is really nice. I am fortunate that like my loan amount leaving law school will be fairly low because of that. And that gives me options in the future if I don't want to stay at a law firm, if I want to go do something else, if I don't want to stay in the legal field. So I personally like having that option and not being tied down to a ton of debt. I will say though, I know some people who commute from Rochester too. Commuting from Batavia is not bad. It's about a 35-minute drive. The other night there was a snowstorm. It took me an hour and 45 minutes to get home and I like cried the whole time, partially because of the snowstorm, mostly because I knew I had homework to do that I wanted to be doing in that time frame. So some people I know that commute, they like literally listen to supplements and stuff on your way. So there's ways to be productive in that time, but you might end up frustrated that you are wasting a lot of time driving. Sometimes it's kind of nice to decompress too. I was always jealous of my friends that lived on campus, but that is also a financial commitment and also a mental commitment because you are living your life at the law school pretty much. And that works for some people. That does not work for me. I like leaving school and having no one know what I am doing on a daily basis and just like living two separate lives. So it's a trade-off. It's a trade-off on time, it's a trade-off on money, and you just kind of have to figure out what works for you. Maybe 1 year it's different too. Maybe first year you do want to live closer. So
Yeah, I live in Lewiston still with my parents, because that was the idea, was to commute. It's like a 30-minute drive when it's snowy, which it is often. It's not always the best drive home. So I do save a lot of money. They also have food, so that's cool. I am learning what I'm willing to trade off. So I think that I am going to be moving to an apartment near campus because the drive is getting to me. And it would just be nicer to do my own thing, have my own space to do work. It's a little, so like depending on your situation, my house is a little loud. So doing work is not, having a quiet space isn't always possible. So like that is something that I tried this year and might be doing something different next year.
Yeah. So I live off campus. I live like 12 to 15 minutes away. I'm from Buffalo. My parents are here. I live 10 minutes from my parents. Do I live with my parents? No. And there's a reason. You need to have that time for yourself. And if that is like, I'm fortunate enough to be rooming with my best friend. So she like really helps me. Like she's just like family at this point. Like she makes sure that I'm eating. She makes sure that I'm like mentally there. So I if you have overbearing parents or like you just want space for yourself because law school is a lot, look for like other housing options. But of course, like law school is expensive at the end of the day. So you do have to weigh the pros and cons. If you live with your parents, they make your meals. But however, they're your parents, you know. So there's that.
I live pretty close to campus, probably like 5 to 10 minutes away. And it was a conscious choice to live this close for weather purposes mainly, to be this close to campus. Um, and I live by myself too, and that also was a choice to live by myself and not have roommates. And I love it not having roommates. It's nice to be able to have a nice quiet place to work when I need it, or to come to campus when it's, I don't need that complete silence. But it's really up to you. I would say know who you are and what kind of atmosphere you need. If you really love complete silence and you're okay living alone, then that's something that you can choose. But if roommates are an option, I know a lot of my friends have roommates and that's something that they love, having that support system.
All right, thank you all. That was all the questions we have in the chat right now. We do have 10 more minutes, so feel free to put any others that you wish to answer. I will go to one more prepared question. When should students apply for summer internships, and what is that process like? If any of you can speak to that.
Sure. So you guys are more going through it, so you can talk a little bit more about 1L, but that process for me last year, I actually started in December, I think end of November, just because some of the judicial internships, which I felt were a stretch, but I ended up getting one, are open then. I actually applied for one during my crim law final, but that was just because it was a 24-hour final and the deadline was at the midnight. So that was worth it because I ended up getting that one. But my recommendation to a lot of people is start looking early, just because like otherwise I wouldn't have gotten something for that one for last summer if I didn't start looking in December. But it totally depends what you're looking for. Those ones are really early. Public interest ones are usually not till the spring. So that totally depends. If you're looking for a firm, that might be kind of middle of winter. Ask around, but just keep that on your radar. Also, grades are a huge factor in that. So like kind of be realistic maybe about your grades, but also don't let that hinder you in terms of what you apply for. Similarly, I did the OCI process this past summer. So on-campus interviews that you have to start getting your stuff together in June and apply for by July. And then interviews are early August. So that's for most of the firms in the area and firms in like New York City and stuff like that. And that is definitely something you have to kind of stay on top of, and also plan out your internship with knowing that you're going to be doing interviews on campus. If those go well, I think I had like 11 on-campus interviews and then I got like 7 callbacks. So like the next couple of weeks were just like interview. Very luckily, the second place I interviewed was the place I wanted to work, and they gave me an offer like the next day. And I was like, I don't care. I'm canceling all these other ones. I'm sick of talking about myself. That worked out well. I know a lot of people who did the process had some like good options, but end up getting nothing. So they had to kind of keep looking in the fall. But then they end up finding stuff. So definitely know what you're looking for if you're looking to do public interest. I actually was interested in that. So I ended up going to a different career fair even after I found the job, talked with someone from Neighborhood Legal Services, and they said I could work there over the winter break. So definitely don't count yourself out on like still going to some of the networking events, because you never know, it might pan out to something during school. But mostly I'd say just stay on top of everything, because if you aren't on top of it, like a lot of the stuff you want could be gone. So
Yeah. I agree with Haley. I also started my job application process sometime so after Thanksgiving, like that's when I started looking at upping my resume and and just like my personal statement as well as just like doing my own research. If you know what area of law you want to go into, that's really helpful because you could just Google search the firms or the organizations you want to work for and like, make a mental note of like when the deadline is. So I knew that I wanted to work for a private firm and I was fortunate enough to be paired with a student, a peer mentor that was super active in my application process. So we basically went through, I was crazy winter break and I applied like anywhere and everywhere, applied to New York, I applied to Buffalo. At the end of the day, the application process is going to be more discouraging than rewarding because you are going to see a lot more rejections than acceptances, but it's a learning process at the end of the day. I would say interviewing is really stressful, but like once you go through like 10 interviews, like you just kind of get the hang of it. What else? I think that's like, yeah. And then the next step after like securing your 1L position is looking to see if you could secure a 2L position because like that is like coming up soon or whatever. So that's something that I have to keep in the back of my head. But yeah.
Great.
I think the one thing I would add to what Teresa said is don't be afraid to go to career services if you don't know what you don't know. You have to, in the fall or spring of your 1L year, meet with someone in career services. They're going to go over your resume, they can go over your cover letter, but their whole job is to help you as a law student get a job, and they want you to succeed. So don't be afraid to set up a ton of meetings with them. Once you get an interview, you can do practice interviews with them. They can review your cover letter as many times as you need, review your resume. They're there for you. So definitely leverage them as a good resource.
Yeah, career services was a big help. I had my mandatory meeting. We went over my resume. He asked me what I was interested in. I told him, he was like, oh, have you heard of this agency? And I said, no. And he said, you should look into it. So I went onto their website. I was like, wow, this is exactly what I want to be doing. And I just emailed them and I said, hi, my name is Mia Forney. I'm a 1L. This is what I'm interested in. I'm wondering if you have any summer, like, are there any summer internships? And like, I made sure to say I was a 1L because I know that some places they don't really want 1Ls. And I got a response back in a few days and they just said, send me your resume, send me this, and then we'll schedule an interview. And that's how I got it. So I didn't even like fully apply. I just sent an email and said, hi, is there anything? And it worked out.
That's great. That's fantastic. We are at time in about 3 minutes, so I do want to just get in this one last thing I always like to ask at the end. What do any of you wish you would have known for law school that you know now?
I think we kind of touched on it a little bit, but I guess just like how time consuming it really is and like how much of a shift it really is. And I know people like tell you that, but then as you're reading for one class from like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., you're like, oh my gosh, this doesn't seem possible. Like, how can people have done this for 100 years? But they have, and now you're doing it, unfortunately. But so I think just like understanding that is a big time commitment. It's probably more work than you've ever done, but that's fine. Like, you will survive it.
Yeah, definitely how time consuming it is. And I guess how much they're trying to, like they always say, like they're trying to break you down and then build you back up. So it's like it's growing pains at the end of the day. Like it's gonna be a very long journey, but it's a well worth it journey at the end of the day. So just like take every opportunity that you can, and like the community is really great here because like we all understand what each and every one of us are going through, and the camaraderie is here. And yeah.
Yeah, I would echo what Haley and Teresa said, it's no experience like any other. You're going to be struggling through the first semester, but it's going to be worth it. And you're going to meet a lot of great people along the way, and they're going through the same thing that you're going through. So definitely make a good friend group, meet new people, and the faculty and professors are there to help you. So don't be afraid to reach out to them if you ever need any help.
Yeah, and just to add, be open to the experience as a whole, be open to changing your view of school and how you do things. Like I never worked past 4 or 5 p.m. before, and now I do. So I just be open to all of that. Like be willing to say that I don't know or that I need to change something, even though like you have a routine and you're set in your ways. Like just be as open as you can about the opportunity that you have.
All right, well, thank you for those answers. And, we're at time now, so I want to just thank everyone that attended virtually today. Thank you for those watching after the recording, but thank you especially to the admitted students who just provided some great questions. And then thank you to our ambassadors for answering and giving some great insight into the law school experience. And definitely check out our other virtual events coming up. And congratulations again to those who are accepted, and thank you for stopping by. Have a great rest of your Friday.